I want to tell you about the night my husband's ex-wife decided to put me in my place, and how one sentence from my husband put the entire room in its place instead. I hadn't planned on any of it happening that evening. It was supposed to be an easy night, my stepson's 10th birthday, a backyard full of balloons, a folding table sagging under too much cake. The kind of evening where the biggest decision was whether to cut the cake before or after presents. Vanessa was there, of course. She always was. She and Mark had been divorced for 6 years, but they'd made the kind of peace that meant birthdays, graduations, and school plays were shared territory. I respected that. I'd never once tried to make it complicated. For 6 years, I'd shown up, smiled, helped set the table, and stayed out of anything that wasn't mine to touch. Vanessa worked in corporate risk, consulting downtown. A job she mentioned within the first 4 minutes of any conversation, and never let anyone forget for the rest of it. She wore her title like jewelry. Senior Director of Enterprise Risk Strategy. She'd say it slowly, like she wanted you to feel the weight of every syllable. I never talked about my work. Not because I was hiding anything dramatic on purpose, not because I enjoyed being mysterious. I simply couldn't. 16 years in, and most of what I did belonged to people who trusted me with information that never left certain rooms. So when people asked, I gave them the true, unremarkable answer. I do some analyst work, government stuff, pretty boring, honestly. It cost me nothing to let people believe that. Or so I thought. The conversation that night had drifted, as it always did at these gatherings, toward the news. Something about a security incident overseas that had been on every channel that week. Vanessa held court the way she always did, laying out her opinion with the confidence of someone paid to sound certain in meetings. It's honestly just basic risk modeling, she said, waving a hand like she was closing a boardroom pitch. Anyone with real analytical training could have flagged that pattern months out. I didn't say anything. I never did. I reached for my water glass, the same small, patient motion I'd made in 100 rooms like this one. That's when Vanessa's eyes landed on me, sitting quiet at the end of the table near the cooler. She smiled, the kind of smile people wear right before they say something they think is clever. You'd probably find all this pretty confusing, huh? She said, loud enough for the table to hear. No offense. You're just a mom. What would you even know about something like this? A couple of people laughed. That easy, complicit laugh people give the loudest voice in the room. Mark's jaw tightened beside me, but he didn't say anything, because he'd learned a long time ago that defending me never actually helped. I just smiled the same closed, patient smile and let it pass. What Vanessa didn't know, what almost no one at that table knew, was that for the past 16 years, I hadn't been sitting behind a desk filing paperwork. I was an intelligence officer. The kind of work where you don't get to explain the acronym on your badge at a dinner party. The kind of work where government stuff pretty boring, is a sentence I'd built like a wall, brick by brick, specifically so nobody would ever ask the next question. I'd read intelligence reports that shaped decisions most people would never trace back to name. I'd sat in briefing rooms with no windows, discussing threats that never made the evening news precisely because someone in a room like that had caught them in time. I'd spent more nights than I could count with my phone on the nightstand, waiting for a call I couldn't tell my own husband the details of, even after it came. None of that mattered right now. Vanessa had made her point, the table had laughed, and I picked up my fork like nothing had happened, because nothing worth reacting to had. Mark, though, had gone very quiet. I felt it before I saw it, that particular stillness he gets when something's building behind his eyes. I put a hand lightly on his knee under the table, the silent signal we developed over the years. Let it go. He usually did. Not this time. Actually, Mark said, setting his own fork down. She'd probably know more about that than anyone else at this table. Vanessa laughed, not unkindly, assuming it was a joke. Sure, babe, sure. I'm serious, Mark said, and something in his voice made the table go still in a way the laughter hadn't. She's not an analyst filing paperwork, Vanessa. She's an intelligence officer. She spent 16 years working classified operations most of us will never be cleared to hear a single detail about. The reason she says government stuff boring isn't because it's boring. It's because she legally can't tell you what it actually is. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It never is. It was just a shift, forks pausing halfway to mouths. Someone near the drink cooler turning fully around. Vanessa's confident half smile freezing in place like she was waiting for the punchline that wasn't coming. She's briefed people 3 ranks above anyone either of us will ever report to, Mark went on, quieter now, like he'd surprised even himself by saying this much out loud. I've watched her get calls at 2 in the morning and leave the house without explaining anything because she legally couldn't. I've watched her come home some mornings and just sit at the kitchen table for 20 minutes before she could even talk to me. I don't know what she does most days. I've stopped asking, but I know it's not basic risk modeling. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me, really looked. The way you look at someone when a piece of information is trying to surface and doesn't fit the picture you'd already drawn. I didn't, she started, and stopped again. I set my glass down gently. It's all right, I said. I don't usually correct people. It's easier not to. Why didn't you ever say anything? She asked. And for the first time all evening, there was no performance in her voice at all. Because it was never anyone's business but mine, I said. And because most of what I've done isn't mine to tell. It belongs to people who trusted me to keep it quiet. That doesn't change just because someone assumes I've got nothing to offer. Nobody laughed this time. One of Mark's coworkers, a quiet man who'd barely said a word all evening, looked at me with something like recognition. Wait, he said slowly. Foster, you're not, He stopped himself, glanced at the kids running past with sparklers, and didn't finish the sentence. But something in his face told me he'd heard a name somewhere, in some briefing, in some report, that matched mine. I didn't confirm or deny it. I never do. Vanessa didn't say much for the rest of the party. I watched her a few times, quieter than I'd ever seen her, turning something over. Later, as people were packing up leftover cake, she found me by the cooler. "I owe you an apology," she said, no performance left in her voice at all. "I've spent years assuming there wasn't much to you because you never talked about yourself. I think I liked that assumption. It made things simpler." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Most people make that same assumption. It's not really about me. It's about what people expect a mom to be." She nodded slowly, like the words were landing somewhere real. "I still shouldn't have said it in front of everyone." "No," I agreed. "You shouldn't have. But I've had worse said to me by people who never apologized at all. So I'll take it." She almost smiled at that, a real one, tired and a little embarrassed. Nothing like the sharp one from earlier. Driving home that night, Mark reached over and took my hand at the stoplight. "I probably shouldn't have said all that," he admitted. "You never like me talking about it." "You didn't say anything you shouldn't have," I told him. "You just told the truth. There's a difference between bragging about someone and refusing to let them be underestimated. You did the second one." He was quiet for a moment. "I just got tired of watching people talk to you like you don't have anything going on behind your eyes." I looked out the window at the streetlights sliding past, thinking about 16 years of government stuff. Pretty boring. 16 years of being the quiet one at the end of the table. 16 years of letting people believe whatever was easiest for them to believe. "I've never needed anyone to know," I said finally. "But I won't pretend it didn't feel good just once to have it said out loud." He squeezed my hand and didn't let go the rest of the drive. I didn't need Vanessa's apology to know who I was. I'd known that for 16 years, long before anyone at that table ever looked at me twice. But there's a particular kind of quiet grace in finally being seen by the people who share your table, even when you never once asked them to look. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones sitting quietly at the end of the table, letting you underestimate them, because the truth was never something they needed you to believe. It was only ever something they knew. If this story found you tonight, I'd love to know, where were you when it stopped you scrolling? Drop a comment and tell me the moment that stayed with you. We share stories like this every day. If you don't want to miss the next one, go ahead and subscribe. There's always another journey waiting.